Yeah, so my first question, who's that, sorry?
That was just the recording. Go on.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, so my first question, John, obviously I know you work online with people all over the world. But I was kind of just curious in terms of what a typical session, what a typical class actually looks like in the day of kind of thing, when especially, more so the online opposed to the face-to-face or how that all works.
Sure. So you mean training online with me? How that works? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, sure. So, there's a couple different levels to it. So I've got people who train with me online as students, and I've got people who train with me online as teachers, right? Um, as students, and as teachers, because the teachers have access to everything. We always start off with movements to get the spine and body open, because you want to have it helps when your body's mobile and open and warmed up, so to speak. So we do about 5 minutes of movements, kind of like what Jason's doing now. He's kind of, moving around there, you can see. Yeah. And then we do the state training. So I take you through a guided state training, spiritual intention, centering, sensing, syncing, seeing, going through all different components of the state, which is, mastering the alignment of the mind with the spirit so that the energy can flow through the system better. Because remember, my master was a master of chi and mind power. So you want to use the mind and energy to manifest your power. So we do a state training to start there. And then we go through the Silam Tower. So every day we'll do state and Silam Tower, and then share observations. And that takes about 30 to 45 minutes. So that's one session. And then we have 5 sessions usually after that. So you have a state training, which includes mobilizations, the meditation, and then the Silentau form. Because the whole idea is to bring the state into the form. So that's why we do the state, then the form, the first form. Then there's 5 sessions throughout the week. You got one on Silim Tao. So we do half an hour of Silim Tao training. Then the next day we do half an hour of sticking hands training, where I go through positions, shapes, fundamentals. Of course, some people have training partners on the call, others don't. So it depends on who's on the call. Then we do Chamkyu training, the second form, Bilji training in the next session, the third form, and then Mukjong training, the fourth form, and that's the 5 sessions. We're not doing any weapons training yet because no one's up to it. Then there's a couple of Q&A sessions, but then there's also coaching on different parts. So, one part on syncing and letting go, one part on intention, and then there's sessions for teachers as well. And so there's quite a bit. I haven't got the full calendar loaded up. And yeah, book a proper call with me. I'll go through the whole calendar with you. But I teach sessions here. So for the teachers, we go live with that as well. So you can actually train alongside us too. So there's about, depending whether you're a student, if you're a student, you get about 10 sessions a week of training with me. If you're a teacher, there's about 20, there's more. But also, what I realized is that most people in the actual free community don't even look at the videos. Like it's more for the actual interaction with live sessions and community that people actually use. So I'm giving, the mind power, the letting go, and the first stage Silam Tao of the curriculum videos in there. But the rest of it, Chumkyu, sticking hands, Bilji, Mukjong, all the weapons, and all the workshops and all the other video courses, I'm reserving for the actual serious students, because no one's using it anyway, apart from the serious students. So I've put that into the private community.
So is that all?
Sorry, go on.
Oh, sorry. It's just so all of those classes, the live classes and stuff, is that in the paid community? Is that not in the free one?
So in the free community, you've got several courses. You've got mind power, so how to develop mind power. You've got the letting go meditation, and you've got the Silam Tao curriculum. I'm also going to be doing probably 2 live sessions a week in there, and there's also the community. So, for those who, you can still learn from that free community, and you can learn a lot there, and that's making it accessible to everyone. But for those who really want to dive in, the 10 to 20 live sessions, or 20 hours of live sessions, the deeper videos and curriculum, the guidance and the coaching, that's in the paid community. Yeah. So there's 2 separate ones. Yeah. Just depends on, if you, to be honest, if you're just curious and you just want to dabble once a week, then the free community is fine. But if you're, you've decided this is something I want to take as my path for development, or if you want to be a teacher, then the paid community is probably a better option. Yeah, neither is wrong nor right. It just depends on what's, you know, in your own mind. Does that answer your question, Gary?
Yeah, it does, and it answered my follow-up question as well.
Okay, there you go.
So my follow-up question, I had to write it down, was kind of what, in your mind, when you've got your student, what in your mind kind of determines when they're actually able to move on to the next stage, whether it be, you know, so they start off Silim Tao, whether when they move on to Chum Q or BG, because I suppose from my perspective, you know, I kind of did Silim Tao for about 3 years before I even kind of started Chum Q, and then did the Chum
Is
Q
that
and then
all?
did the BG.
Just 3? I did 10.
Yeah, I was quite lucky. It's quite fortunate, you know, but you know, so that was, you know, that model. Obviously, you're aware of that model in terms of,
Yeah.
you know, you do that in stages, and I just think it's kind of refreshing in terms of how you set that curriculum out, which is what you answered in the first question. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, look,
I just
how do I,
kind of approach.
to answer your question, look, the thing is that when my master passed away, his wish to us as his last disciples was find a faster and better way to teach the Nim Tao power. He used to call it Nim Lik, which meant mind force, but then he later called it Nim Tao, from Sil Nim Tao, right? And he said, find a faster and better way to teach this. Yeah, so I've spent, you know, the last, since I was training with him, but the last decade or more, trying to figure out faster, deeper, better ways to teach the state. You know, and I'm pretty much cracked the code with that now, because people can get into the state and keep it quite quickly and easily. So, you know, now, and with this new format of teaching online, primary is the state. So pretty much each session starts with the state. You get yourself into the state, get yourself into a good sense of power and alignment within your center, spread that through the whole system through sensing, learn to release, and then target it. It's actually not hard when you understand the framework of how to do it. So then putting that into the movements is the key. So if we look at how I would teach that, and when I would say someone's ready for the next form, is firstly, I'll know the students on the class. So, you know, I'll say, if you're still an embryo, then don't do this. Meaning if you're still in your first 9 months, then don't do this full form yet. Practice this. So I usually give, for example, if someone's not ready for Chum Q, I'll tell them you should be pivoting. Practice pivoting with the state before you go through the movements. Okay, everyone else who's ready, let's go through the Chum Q form. So there's always something you can work on based on your level. So you can think of it like, you know, stages, you know, someone can just stand in their stance, someone can pivot, someone can go through the actual movements, some can go through it faster. Others who already know the form will go through on their own. So there's the requirements of time, meaning time comes along with actually knowing the sequence of movements, right? So if you know the sequence of the Silim Tao movements, then you're already in a good starting point, because you're past stage 1. But then stage 2 is like, okay, make sure your shapes are actually beautiful. You can know the sequence, but your shapes can be terrible, right? Yeah. So you need to make sure your shapes are good, yeah? And then do you understand and comprehend the state correctly to be able to put that into the form, yeah? And then from that, then, you know, the basics, like I'm giving you an example, like, for example, from stage 1, like Silim Tao, to stage 2, Chum Q, you'd have to know the form, the shapes would have to be good, you have to understand the state, and then you have to also be able to demonstrate the basic self-defense techniques and the basic self-defense system that we would use. You know, and once you meet those requirements, then you're ready for Chum Q, you know? So there are, you know, check marks to be sure that you're actually ready for it. I'm not gonna get you doing Chum Q, Bilji, Mukjong before, you know, otherwise you'll actually set yourself back, you know what I mean? You'll develop bad habits. For example, you might start turning in Chum Q without a connection to your arm. So you're just turning mindlessly with no connection to the structure of your arm. And then you've built a habit in doing that, which we have to rework. So, you know, I monitor each student and I give I give a suggestion as to what they should be doing, you know. But to be honest with you, sometimes I make the suggestion, they don't listen. And that's their prerogative. I'll always say, look, I'm not your mum, do what you want. This is my suggestion, but if you want to do the full form, just do it.
Yeah. So I suppose just to very quickly, because I don't want to hog this myself, but you know, from your perspective, so you talked about the connection, brilliant point. So Is it when someone tells you they're feeling a certain way, or your observation, kind of when you're able to know that, yeah, they've got that bit?
Well,
That
it's
makes
easy to,
sense.
yeah, for sure. It's easy to see if they can do the form. That's easy. You know,
Yeah.
like I can see the sequence and the shapes and the form. The thing is that the more you practice, the more you can just see it. Meaning you can see when someone's connected from their spine to their limb. You can see
Okay.
syncing. You
I get
can
it.
just
I
through
get it.
observation look at them and say, okay, I can tell you're doing this. You know, so
Yeah.
which of course it takes time. You know, I've been doing it like 25 years now, so I'd hope that I'd be able to have a little appreciation for what's going on.
Yeah, cool. No, you know, that makes perfect sense. Brilliant. Thank
Thing
you.
is that, and then, you know, the cool thing is that people then come and train as well. Now, for example, Jace, who's on the call now, he's in Melbourne, but he's come up a couple of times to train. And I had my hesitations with teaching online. I've only started literally, I think it was like, 9-10 months ago, I started teaching online. Because I really doubted that you could transfer skill through this.
I was skeptical about it a few years ago, but more and more people, you know, they're doing it and it's working. You know, I can see people going out there with obviously different people, different guys all over the world, and something's working. So, you know.
Yeah, I've seen it work. I've experienced it firsthand. I've had people train online and then come in and they can do it. They're in the state and their movements are going to like, holy crap, I've been, you know, wasting all this time. I can actually help people develop skill through this format. And of course, they need to train physically with a person to develop the sticking hand skill and the combat skill. But there are foundational elements such as the state, the forms, the shapes, the body coordination, the focus, the concentration, the relaxation that can be cultivated outside of physical contact. So this truly is a valuable asset in the development of skill and the spreading of Kung Fu.
Thank you.
No worries, my pleasure. All righty, what other questions do we have?
Well,
yeah,
I've got some questions about Taigong and, you know, what it's supposed to feel like. Now, just as background, I've got almost 20 years in with Wing Chun from the Moyat lineage. Right, so we don't really talk about the kind of things that Chishon Tin talked about, although there's a lot of respect for him. It's just something we don't do. So I'm trying to. I don't want to throw away almost 20 years of Wing Chun experience and start from scratch. But, you know, so I'm trying to get a handle on where do I start? I mean, what is it supposed to feel like, you know, when you're drawing up? I mean, are you thinking about anything when you're doing Selim Tao? Are you supposed to feel anything anywhere when you're doing Selim Tao? You know, is it your spine? Is it the back of your head? Is it in your hands? You know, yeah, because I've listened to stuff from Nima King as well. So I'm trying to find the handles on this so I can apply what you guys are doing from your lineage to what I'm doing in my lineage.
Sure.
So
yeah,
I'm just kind of looking at the ideas where to start.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah. Good news is that you don't have to throw away that 20 years of skill, knowledge, and experience. That's only going to lend to it. The only clashes would be if there are, you know, concepts which build tension in your system. That'd be like, for example, if they tell you to tense your, for example, your hips or your shoulder, for example, if they did, I'm not saying they do, that would work against this type of skill, for example. Another thing which may work against the development of skill is the correct movement of the structure. So, for example, sometimes people with the bong sao, they over rotate the shoulder to turn the shoulder in towards themselves, which creates a level of tension in the bong sao, which is unnecessary. If the shoulder joint is more expanded and aimed forward, that could also work against it if you're structurally incorrect. So there are some things which do work against the kind of integration, but generally speaking, there's not that many things. So to directly answer the first part of the question, Taigong, what does it feel like? Initially, it'll feel like a bit more active. So when you draw up from the base, you'll literally feel like, okay, I'm kind of like I'm gently stopping myself from going to the toilet. So initially, that's kind of the feeling you want. However, as you have practiced it longer, it's a very soft feeling. So, you know, an analogy or something to look at would be if I squeeze my wrist and I push up, right? It's not that feeling, right? Which, if we're thinking about the anus, so to speak, it's more like this, like you're running your finger up it. So it's a movement of awareness up through the base, which gets a gentle sensation of lifting, yeah, from the base. Now, it's such a fundamental part. And the way you can test it is that you can actually get someone to lift you when you don't do it and lift you when you do it. So get them to go behind you and grab you like this around the waist and the belly, and slowly lift you up when you're not activating Taigong, and then get them to do it again when you are activating Taigong. Essentially, all it does is, from a physical standpoint, is it unifies the upper body and the lower body. So the legs and hips with the torso and arms, right? So that when you make contact with the person, you're a unified mass through the physical connection of the waist link from Taigong. So you softly draw up. It's not a tense thing. Over time, it softens, right? So the next thing. The first part is the physical, right? You softly draw up and you get a sense of lifting at the base. It's very gentle. But that's more so important in that you want to connect that spot to the crown. So you have a sense of like a liftingness through the spine. So you feel like someone's lifted the crown of the head upward. Now, this is the connection from the tail to the crown, which first is structurally important, because if you have tension throughout your spine, that's a place someone can attack when they make contact with you. So, you know, if we're doing sticking hands and you've got tension anywhere along your vertebra, a good practitioner will attack that naturally and break your structure. Further to that, so you open the spine up, right, to create space. Because if your spine's collapsed, it's automatically got tension in it because the muscles are and ligaments and tendons are all closing, right? Whereas in Sulim Tao, in the state, we want a sense of expansion. So Taigong is first the unification of the lower and the upper, and the sensation you're looking for is just a gentle lift. It's nothing hectic or aggressive. Then the spine should be opened upward. You have a sense of opening, which creates a good solid structure. The spine supports the limbs. Then from an energetic standpoint, this open pathway then can potentiate the rising of energy. In Cantonese, they would say sing hei, which means rise the chi, and in further study, you want to have a good quality of energy rising through your center, because then you can start to direct through the mind, direct the energy through your system and to their center. Because of course you've heard of the center line. So Taigong is a foundational part of making sure the spine is a strong structural support, but then also making sure you can start to get a good sense of energy in your center to connect to theirs. If you want to start using mind power, if you want to start using, which, you know, as we get older, it's kind of becomes necessary because our athleticism drops. So we need to start to use something which we can still have a good faculty with. So, you know, mind power starts to become kind of essential as we get older, because, you know, you're not going to be stronger than the younger, faster, more athletic guys, right?
Yeah, tell me about it. I'm 73 and I'm bouncing around against guys that are 25, 30 years old, you know. So when I go play Chiso with them.
You mean that they're bouncing you around a bit? Is that what you mean?
No. I'm interacting with guys that are 25 and 30 years old.
Yeah.
So
yeah, so if you softly draw up and keep it, to make it very simple, right? Have a soft sense of drawing up and sense your center. Sensing is that now this is important clarification. You've got sensation and you've got sensing. They're linked, but they're different. Sensation is the sensation of the physical body, right? So you can feel your butt on the seat, you can feel your feet on the floor, you can feel the warmth on your skin. That's sensation of the physical body. Sensing is the is the awareness of the space you exist in. So that's the energetic side. So you want to sense your actual space, sensing the etheric body or energy body or chi body, subtle body, call it what you want. We have a non-physical body, which is partnered with the physical body, right? So sensing, in particular to your question, you want to sense your center. So it's your energetic center, yeah, which is like where the central meridian is. And further it's actually where your energetic system is, right? Meaning your chakra system. You want to be able to send energy from the system. So let's put it quite plainly. Softly draw up and sense your center. Now, that's the baseline. You want to softly draw up and sense from the tail to the crown. By having your focus there, you start to utilize the spine more as a source of power, but further, you'll start to use the energy, but we'll get to that. Now, if you want to make this even more powerful, which it sounds like you do, as you softly draw up and sense your center, bring your intention to mind. Intention being, power, joy, peace, love, skill, whatever it might be. Because one thing I discovered was that it was my master's level of consciousness which allowed him to maintain and manifest the power that he had. He was at quite a high level of consciousness. And if you're interested in these levels of energy and power, you really need to look at Power versus Force, a book written by Dr. David Hawkins. He also wrote Letting Go and several other great teachings on the map of consciousness and the levels of energy. Just give me 1 sec, I'll show you it now. Because lifting Taigong and sensing the center is the baseline for generating the power that essentially, you're interested in Choi Shung Tin's teachings, most likely because of the power he could generate without force. Like that's literally what his skill was. It wasn't so much about angles and techniques. It was about internal power, right? So softly drawing up and sensing the center is like the baseline pillar for that. And the thing is that, I don't know if you can see it, but he had this is the map of consciousness, meaning the different levels of consciousness and human experience. And we all know that there are different levels of people, the angry guy, the peaceful guy, the frustrated girl. So everyone has a different kind of baseline of energy. My master's was quite high. He was always really joyful, always quite wise. So he was at a high level of power. So to simplify this, you've got, force, which is weak, and power, which is strong, right? So he was always in a high level of power. So the reason I'm communicating this is because if you want to be able to manifest that internal power, there needs to be an awareness of your level of energy, your level of consciousness. And the way to attune with that is via intention, which links you to the mind. So as you sense your center, you bring your intention to mind, whether that's, power, peace, joy, whatever, because that will increase the frequency within your central column, which you then start to move from. Think of it this way, if you're, sensing your center and you're angry and frustrated, like how effective do you think you're going to be? There's a limit to that. So I know I've taken it to more of the mental and non-physical from your question about Taigong, but I mean, if you're looking to manifest internal power, it's a requirement. I trained, with my master for 10 years, so I was able to observe him quite a lot and observe the training room and the way things worked in there. And he'd be able to put people in the state, but then the state would disappear pretty much instantly. So, and it was like, why, how come I can stay in state and you can't? And also some people who were training more than others would get worse, right? So they wouldn't actually get better. And the main reason being is their actual level of energy, because the guys that were getting worse were guys that were quite filled with pride and anger, is what I noticed. They had quite a forceful frequency, and the girls and guys that were getting better were the ones that had a better overall energy, the more joyful, more kind, more reasonable, more the people you want to be around, right? Yeah. So to simplify all of that, I've given you a fair bit of context there, Joe. To simplify it, softly draw up, sense your center, and bring to your mind your intention. Now, the way that you will know that you've done that is via the emotional quality, meaning the emotions are an indicator of your degree of alignment with your intention. So let's just say your intention's peace, for example, right? When you think of something peaceful, you'll get like a peaceful sensation in your emotional quality. So that's the indicator. So once again, simplified, softly draw up, sense your center, and then bring that good feeling quality into the center. This starts to influence the overall energy in here, allowing you to manifest the internal power. So yeah, this is the fastest route to doing it at the moment. Like we got guys coming in after, short amount of training, and they can manifest a lot of power. I had a girl who was training for like 3 months, and a guy who'd been training in our same lineage, but at another school for 10 years. And he got thrown around by the girl from 3 months of training, which is a really evidence to this approach. If you can get your center open and align it with good energy, the good chi, yeah, even though that's seen as a bad word in martial arts sometimes, then you can manifest a lot of power without force.
And I should be able to delve a little bit more into this with the training videos that are available to the public.
Yes.
You go into more depth there.
Yeah. Have you gone into the mind power course
I've nibbled at the edges, but I haven't gotten deeply into it yet.
Yeah. Make it the main course now.
Okay.
Yeah, like I explain it all in depth there. I explain, how to use the center, how to explain the levels of consciousness, how to use paradigm shifting as well, because one of the other things that have really shortcutted training, I'll give you an example. A guy who I used to teach you, I still teach you, he'd often come in and he'd be complaining about, fucking work, this and that. Oh, sorry about the swear word. This and that is, my wife, this and this and problem, that problem. And I keep telling him, man, you got to stop complaining and acting like, life's throwing you around. Otherwise, you're never going to be able to infuse the spirit in the center, because you've got to take mastery and control of your own internal condition. So basically, it took me a couple of years to beat that into his skull. But when he figured it out, there was a huge shift. He no longer blames anyone for anything. He takes full responsibility for his emotional condition. So the summary of this paradigm I'm talking about is responsibility. As soon as you take responsibility for your internal condition, you can then influence the energy within your system. If it's always someone else's fault, it's the weather or the circumstance or the government or your wife or whatever, then you have no control, but you've given the control away. So by taking responsibility for your internal condition, you can influence the state so much better. So when there was like a big shift. It was like of course it took 2 years, but one day it just clicked. I'm sure you guys have had that in your training, right? You're told to relax, relax, relax. And you go, oh, relax. Is that what you mean? Anyway, when he made that paradigm shift, his skill just skyrocketed, and he started, throwing people around. He's just much happier. He's like, my daughter just comes and tells me she loves me all the time now. So, and he's just in a much better energy constantly, which allows him to manifest the state. So what am I getting at? That is in there as well. I go through every bit and piece. I explain also the 5 components of the state: intention, centering, sensing, syncing, and seeing, all the different types of energy and the underlying frameworks for you to enter it quickly. So if you watch the Mind Power course and do the exercises in it as well, Joe, that should give you a good framework and baseline to start applying that. And the cool thing is that you're already training, so you can start to practice it in your chi set. Okay, I'm going to focus on centering and connecting through the visual energy, or I'm going to practice syncing whilst they're putting pressure up, for example, and you'll see the actual benefit through direct experience in application. So 100% have a crack at that, Joe.
Okay, thank you.
No worries, my pleasure. All righty, I think we have another question in the chat. All right, your name's not Deliana. What's your actual name, champ?
Yeah, we're on my wife's Zoom account by accident, but my name is Francis, and this is Adia. Yeah.
Francis and Adia, how's it going? All right, so with the online training school group, maybe pay group, do you do grading? Like, is it possible to get belts and go up the levels, or does that person need to be the only person? Maybe there's same thing. Sure. Yeah, that's a really good question. At the moment, I let people go up through the levels. So for example, if your skill is sufficient, and your Silam Tao and your basic self-defense movements look good, and you understand the state, the shapes are there, then I'll move you to the next form. But, you know, I'm not giving belts or certificates or grades. So it's more in the traditional sense that you're moving through the grades. For example, at my master's school in Hong Kong, you'd walk in there and there'd be no structure at all. You just go in there and practice what you know. He'd walk around and teach you what you were doing, right? So it was proper traditional style. And since, to be honest with you, I'm still a young online school, I don't know. Maybe I will. Like, I'll give Jace, who's here right now, as an example, he's come down a couple of times, so I have been able to grade. And to be perfectly honest with you, I think you would need to train with a registered teacher like myself or one of the other teachers to you know, say, yes, you have reached this level. Like, it's hard to say, oh, you can defend yourself against a bigger, stronger, untrained opponent if I can't see it, you know what I mean? And I can't feel it. So
Yeah.
I'm still, it's a great question. To be honest with you, I'm still figuring that out, because, you know, we're only new to this platform.
Yeah, just thinking for Adia, he's been learning like jujitsu and boxing and stuff, but just he's young, he's going to turn 13 soon, and just as a kind of some benchmarks in a way that he can progress over the next few years. I was just wondering if that can kind of work in with. Is there any other like the same stuff that you're teaching?
Yeah, sure. So the benchmarks would be like unlocking access to the higher levels of content. So, like, for example, in the paid community, I've got the, you know, Silam Tao, Chum Cube, I've got all the different levels, right? And you'd unlock those. And when you train with me, I suggest, okay, now you can do this. If you're not good enough, don't do it. You know what I mean? So there's that as well. So that'd be the only benchmarks, as opposed to, like, you know, but it's a good idea. Maybe I should be sending out certificates and belts as a way to kind of symbolize one's growth through the system. I have to get back to you on that. Thanks for posting that question though.
Cool. Thanks, man.
All righty. Do we have any other questions at all, team?
I got a question on a training point. How do you instruct students to express forward energy without overcommitting muscularly? You know, you can put hands on somebody in Chisao and be very heavy, you know, and think that you're expressing forward intent, where really all you're doing is giving the other guy a handle to play with. So there's a fine line between forward intent and overcommitting. How do you instruct your students on that?
Sure. Yeah, that's a really great question. So firstly, it depends on exactly what they're doing, you know, but I can give you some general guidelines so you can start to feel it within yourself. So the first kind of requirement is that you consciously sense yourself. If you're because the problem often is that the connection between thinking and what you're actually doing with your body is not correct. So someone will think to themselves, oh, I'm focusing the energy forward, but really they're just pushing and leaning, for example. So the key tool to know whether you're pushing or not, or leaning or not, is sensing, which comes back to what I talked about you need to do with your center. When you really sense your space and you have the sensation of your body, you can catch when you're pushing and leaning. But often we're so focused outwardly, like I'm focusing forward, that you don't notice that you're actually pushing or leaning. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure.
So the first baseline is sensing. But then the question becomes, okay, I've got a sense, but then how do I actually do it, right? So one part is, how do I self-teach? How do I manage it so I do it properly? Sensing is the first. Then the next part is, how do I do it then? So first and foremost, you do need the center activated, because otherwise you haven't got a good foundation of energy within your system. So centering, like our first conversation, let's just say that's already taken care of. You're drawn up and you're nice and open in your center and you're sensing it. Then the next component is, rather than thinking forward, which is just, I'm going to go forward, and that's void of direct experience of sensation, As you sense the space, you aim the actual space itself through the center plane. We all hear about the center line and how important center line is, you know, like a very key principle of Wing Chun, right? But what does it actually mean? The center line is the energetic plane from your central column, your energetic center, to their energetic center. So the primary is to be sure that this line inside ourselves is magnetized, targeted, and flowing towards their center. Not a pushing or a leaning of your spine, a targeting. Targeting is the sensation and the aiming, which links to what we call the moving energy or the sinking chi. So, you know, you talk about, we talk about sinking and releasing, and that's a downward movement of energy, like kind of like gravity. That same quality of energy moves forward. So think of it like this, right? We're sitting here looking at this screen, right? But if you were to think of walking through the screen without physically moving, you start to feel a movement within your system. That's the intention leading the energy. Yeah. So let's simplify. From sensing your center, you aim the flow from your center to their center. So, you know, we call this the power line, right? Your center connected to their center. And then rather than pushing or leaning, you sense the whole space the body occupies, and you funnel all of the space, energy, and intention through the center plane. So in order to manifest high levels of forward force, which I think is not a very good word, to be honest, because force leans towards using the physical body, I'd say, you know, forward intent or forward flow or forward power is a better way of describing it. You center, you get a good feeling in your center, you target the center, so you sense that space and aim it. It's like you're wishing for their center to be yours, or it's like your center is inside theirs. And then you sense the whole space and aim it through that. So think of it like everything funneling into the center, because then you dominate this line with power. So simplified, sense your center, get a good feeling. So what we spoke about before, and then target everything through that line like it's a magnetic line, and all your space flows into it. Now, the key indicator is sensing, not sensation. Sensing your space, so you know you're not pushing. You have the intention, and it will feel more like you're balanced and grounded, and everything's flowing forward, and it wants to go forward, but you're not physically pushing it. So, you know, forward intention is exactly, you know, it's actually a good description of it. It's the intention directing the energy of the system. But in order for the energy of the system to be directed with forward intention, you need to be sensing the energy of the system. So rather than just thinking about it like you think about what am I going to have for lunch, or I've got a to-do list, it's not so much thinking about it, it's more sensing it. So you sense the center, you target the center, and then you let everything funnel into that line. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. And then, you know, you can play with that. So a tool that I would suggest for you, Joe, is to actually do wrong and right, meaning purposefully kind of push your body and lean a little bit on purpose, right? So that you can go, okay, that's what I don't want to do. Now I'm going to center, sense, and target through my center. Center myself, get that good feeling, sense my space, and target through the center. So then do it that way and go, okay, this is how this feels. And then go back and do pushing again. Yeah. And then go back and do sensing and aiming again. So that's a really quick way to develop your experience and understanding of the skill, is through comparison. So often, and I picked that up from my master, because he, I can't remember what the conversation was about, but he was demonstrating the 3 different levels, like 3, if we have to give generic levels. One was strength level, so muscular, structural level, skeletal, and state, energetic, mind. And he did this movement on me with muscle, with structure, and with state. After he demonstrated that, I asked him to, you know, set me up and let me practice it that way, so I could experience it. But then I realized it was a very good way to start to know the difference of when you're using muscle, when you're using structure, and when you're using the state. So if we summarize for your question, sensing is the key, because then you'll know whether you're pushing or not. But then sensing your center and funneling everything through, and then targeting the sensation or the sense of the body, targeting the sense of the body through the center line as opposed to the pushing sensation. And then play around with the different types. Okay, I'm going to consciously push, and I'm going to consciously use the state, right? And that should start to develop your skill in that area.
Well, what I do when I chi sao, I mean, especially with like intermediate or a younger student, I'll intentionally lean on them to try and bait them into letting me create an opening. So I've got some sense of the leaning and not leaning that way, but I'm trying to develop more of this sense of what you're calling state in order to improve my skill level there. So,
Gotcha.
I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Gotcha. A simple idea or image that you could use is like, if you imagine there's like a giant sun behind you, right? And your center is like your center from tail to crown is like a window, and that light is funneling through your center to their center. Like that could be a simple image to bring to mind. Just go, okay, there's that light coming through my center to theirs. That'd be a good concept or image to bring the whole condition together. Because oftentimes when you're starting it out, it's like, okay, I've got to draw up, I've got to sense it, I've got to bring a good feeling. There's a lot of bits and pieces. But oftentimes one simple image may bring it all together for you.
Okay.
By the way, I'll put this recording up somewhere in the group, just so if you guys wanted to go over it again, it's there. All right. Do we have any other questions before we finish up today?
Well, at the risk of dominating this, I've got one more question. Your lineage talks a lot about sort of expanding your vertebra, expanding, the joints. I mean, could you just maybe discuss that a little bit, just so we can get a better idea of what's going on there?
Sure. Danhui, or expansion, is of the joints, is yes, definitely something that happens when you're in the state. The simplicity of it is that everything should be expanding, and the way to really have that as something that kind of happens is coming back to this. Why? Because force contracts. Like, think about it. When you tense your muscles, everything's contracting, but power expands, right? So the deeper if we go to the actual core problem, right, of how to manifest, or the blockages to manifesting internal power, the core problem is force, is that we use too much force mentally, emotionally, or physically, right? So in order to manifest expansion, you need to be coming from power. So once again, centering in your intention, Taigong, sense your center, and bringing your mind to a higher level of energy, power, peace, joy, connection, whatever, is going to be the framework and the baseline for it. I know that seems a bit kind of etheric or, too mental, but without a foundation in power, expansion is just practically impossible. So coming back to it. First things first, centering yourself. So Taigong, spine tall. And here you're already working on expansion of the joints, because as you think of rising up, there is an actual opening of the spine. So that's foundational. You must have that first before you can think of expanding the shoulder joints or the elbow joints. It just won't happen, right? My master was, he'd come around and manipulate joints to open joints up to help us get the feeling. But without this, then you won't be able to do it on your own. So without the center, you won't be able to expand your own joints. So Sil Nim Tao actually potentiates the expansion of joints on its own. Meaning, if you're centering, you're centered, you're sensing your space, and you're syncing, the joints start to open of themselves. So have you gone through much of the content? Yeah, I think you've only been nibbling at the edges, like you said, right, Joe?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, you could probably just focus mainly on the state meditations. Like, you don't really need to go through, for example, if you look at the level 1 curriculum, the Sil Nim Tao curriculum, but just skip through to the state trainings, meaning like, the energy work. Those ones will give you the most value.
Okay.
Yeah, and essentially, expansion is the combination of sensing, syncing, and intention. So for example, you sense the shoulder joint, right? Let's just say the center's already sent, like you've already put a good quality of energy and your center's already open, right? So you've got an expansion in the center already. Then you sense the shoulder, you sense its space, right? And as you sense it, there already is a sense of expanding. You sense the shoulder, there's a subtle openingness. And then as you sink, meaning you release tension, that adds to another expansion of the shoulder joint, which for example, at my master's level, everything's already expanded. It's not like you'd have to say, okay, now I'm going to expand my shoulder, my hips and my spine. It's just everything's expanded from the state. So sometimes teaching tools can be a barrier, meaning, for example, my master never trained rotation of joints, even though he taught that later. So he got a high level of power in his Sifu Tao from practice. And then in trying to communicate how to do it, he would teach joint rotation because he was using very little force. So he taught to rotate joints instead of, pushing, right? But the problem with that is that often people will just focus on this joint as opposed to the overall condition, the state. So expansion of joints, what I'm getting at here is a resultant effect of the state, which is what? Centering your intention, make the spine nice and tall and open, sense your space, be in that good energetic quality, sink and release, and target from your center to the center. Intention, centering, sensing, sinking, and seeing, the 5 components of the state. When you have those on, the joint expansion happens as a natural consequence. Does that answer your question, Joe?
Yes, it does.
Good. Yeah, I think, you'll really, if you want to just get to the essence of what my master was teaching, focus on the state, which is those 5 components I spoke about. In the mind power course, I go through that all in depth. And then throughout the, I'll quickly share the screen and show you where it is, just so it makes it easier for you to understand what I'm trying to say. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so here's this. Now go to where is it? Here we go. So in the classroom section here, you got the Mind Power course. This is the one you should definitely get into. It's got everything this is the one you should really chew on. It'll get you, because that just goes deep. So that's probably the main focus. But once you've gone into that and learned a lot from it, and also post whatever questions you can in here, then the Sifu Tao part here, the number 1 that I just entered, you'll see there's all these different exercises here. I would focus on the ones that here, intention, which after doing the Mind Power course, you'll know what they are. And then you'll see as you scroll down, centering. So how to center yourself, sensing here, sensing. So all the different energetic parts. What I mean is you could skip all the technique based training, like how to do a Hun Sao or a Tan Sao, because obviously you're aware of that already. Seeing energy, how to use seeing, the visual energy, and then sensing. Then I start to combine the different types of energy together. So you can still get a lot of value out of the level 1 curriculum. But first things first, jump into the Mind Power course. That's going to be the most beneficial for you.
Okay. Wow. And as my Sifu says, the answer to every question is more Sifu Tao.
Yeah, that's exactly right. My master used to always say "Lindo Di," which means train more. Awesome. Thanks so much, guys. Is there any final questions before we finish up today?
Thank you for your courtesy.
My pleasure. I'm probably going to do these weekly now, just so I can help you guys continue to grow and develop. So bring your questions each week. I might do a state training as well for you guys, just to help you get an understanding for the internal power of our system as well. So just keep an eye out in the calendar. Thanks again for joining. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and we'll see you in the community. Peace, guys.
Thanks for your time, John.
Thank you.
Peace.
Peace.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you.
Hey.